Hey everybody, welcome to episode 10 of my Musical Moment series. That's right, episode 10. This is the one we've been waiting for, and what we know about today is that it's going to be a very special episode. I have been talking about doing this episode for like 4 weeks. And in fact, so much so that this inspired episode 8, where I spun off into my little series about the symphony. And if you haven't seen that already, click right there and it's going to tell you all about what is a symphony. And in that video, I talk about this video. So in this video, I'm talking about that video, sending you over there. It's 2.5 minutes. It gives you all the information you need to know. And then you come back here and you talk about Tchaikovsky, the man, the one, the only Tchaikovsky. If you twist my arm, I might tell you that Beethoven and Copland are some of my favorite composers, but the third guy that I would tell you is my favorite composer is someone named Tchaikovsky. And today we're going to talk about one of his symphonies, just one piece, his Symphony number 6. We're starting at the end. It would be easy to start with number 1, work our way through. No, we're going to do the opposite here. We're going backwards. Number 6 to start with, the Pathétique, the last piece that he wrote, and would you believe? He died 9 days later. Now, did he know? Did he feel that something was happening? Did he feel like this would be his final notes that he would write down on a page? Lots of people think so because it does seem to say adieu in the music. Let me set the scene for you. Tchaikovsky is one of the most important and most famous composers in the world. He's had a huge career here. He's a national hero. He enjoyed a patron who supported him for more than a decade to write pretty much anything that he wanted. He traveled widely, including to this country. Interesting trivia question for today. Who performed at the opening of Carnegie Hall? You can probably guess the answer. Tchaikovsky was there. The important thing, though, is that Tchaikovsky was an enormous success, a national hero, and when he wrote a symphony, it was a huge deal. We talk about Tchaikovsky's symphonies usually in groups of 3. We have his 3 early symphonies, 1, 2, and 3, and then this masterful set of his 3 later symphonies, 4, 5, and 6. And what I mean by that when I say a master at work, we see him in command not only of the orchestra as an instrument, but also in the symphonic form. And once again, if you haven't, take a look at my symphonic primer so you get a little idea of what I'm talking about. That's why I actually made that, so I could talk to you about this symphony, because he really does break with form here. So I mentioned in there that sometimes symphonies begin with this sort of harmonically and rhythmically vague opening. Boy, the case here, listen to this opening. Mystery, quiet. It's an open fifth, so we don't actually know, is it major or minor? We're not sure what's happening. And from this grows a bassoon line. And it seems to like being trying to get started once, twice, comes back a second time. So there's this sense of it's trying to grow, but we're not quite sure if we can get there. Tchaikovsky loves the bassoon. In almost all of his symphonies, there are wonderful moments for the bassoon. Very famous solos in the 4th Symphony, the 5th Symphony, the 2nd Symphony. Definitely loves the bassoon, and he starts with this interesting, buzzy, and wonderful color that comes out. And of course, low strings. So we have the cellos and the violas here at the beginning. The violins don't even come in for a little bit. And here he divides the violas. So we have a couple of different voices and this sort of really rich, deep scoring here. In fact, so much so that when the last time we did this piece with the Adrian Symphony, we hired an extra stand of violas just to get a richer and deeper sound. We don't necessarily do that so that they're louder, but we do that so that the sound can be deeper and more beautiful. And you can really tell that even with the addition of just 2 extra players, the sound becomes a little more complex and a little more beautiful, I think, for sure. So then once we get through this opening, after this, it seems to have this questioning quality, like what's going to happen? Then the main part of the tune begins, and he stays here with the violas in this allegro, but not too fast yet, just an interesting and exciting allegro. So when we have this allegro then, dun, 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 yada-da-da-da, there seems to be something intense about it, as if it's something I have to tell you this secret, right? And then it all starts to come out. So, you know, when you're telling a story, sometimes you say, well, this part and then this part. And then you really get into it. Tchaikovsky masters that, first with the violas and then passes this tune around. And then we introduce the winds as well, with this kind of fleeting, sort of scurrying music here in this opening. So that's our main theme. But throughout this movement, rather than sort of staying in this traditional allegro tempo, what's fascinating about this opening movement is he keeps switching between these two different characters. That first theme that we just heard, and then this contrasting second theme, which could not be more different. And this theme seems to just sweep from up high down below and covers a huge range, you know, not really a singable range. Usually we think of melodies as being, you know, written for the human voice and sounding really, really beautiful. Here Tchaikovsky starts quite high, dipping way down in the line before he turns it around. And there, again, it's divided strings, so you get this really rich, it's almost like chocolatey sound. And as I said, a master of the orchestra, the way he's using the different instruments with the moving interior lines, just beautiful here. And this line then is repeated and becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. Then the development, this fiery and exciting section. Something really unusual happens at the end of the first movement here. Rather than wrapping up with any of that energy, he changes to really new material here. Listen to this pizzicato here and how he wraps up this first movement. Very tidy and neat, but again seems to be taking us somewhere else, almost as if, oh, there's more to this story. There's something else here. And I think maybe more than any other symphony, this sets up the movements to come so very, very well by introducing almost kind of a new color and a new idea at this point. Now, as you might remember here, the second movement is often a dance movement, a minuet. And minuets are usually in three, like a waltz. But Tchaikovsky's cleverer than that. He actually does something which I think at the time was almost unprecedented, and he writes his dance movement in 5. The vast majority of music that anyone knows is in 2, 3, or 4. But here, Tchaikovsky really breaking the mold, pushing the limits by writing something in 5. And what I think is so striking about it is how natural it feels. It's introduced first in the cellos. So just hear how lovely that is, how beautiful and elegant. And again, a master at work. Listen to how long the line is that he draws out. This incredibly long lyric line that just connects one measure into the next. And even though it's in 5, it still feels right. You know, a lot of times when composers write in unusual meters, it's to give it this sort of off-kilter, like almost like interruption or out of sync quality. But here somehow Tchaikovsky manages, even in 5, to give this long line as it hands off from one instrument to the next instrument. Here in the winds, he does this little handoff near the end of the movement. So lovely here. Just really interesting as he does this. So as we move forward now to the third movement, we would expect this to be the slow movement. Because we've had our dance movement, we've had our first movement, we would expect a third movement here, the slow movement. But right away, we know something is amiss because we start with these short, fast notes. Quiet at first, almost scurrying. I remember the last time I did this piece talking to the orchestra about how this suggested the Nutcracker to me, with all the mice running around. Little dashes of sound here. And in one of the most striking developmental things here, we hear just a little bit of melody. So he tosses that tune around. But I don't know if you've noticed, this is not actually a melody. It's a piece of a melody. So we haven't really heard the whole length of it for several minutes into this movement. And then finally there's this big arrival and the clarinets get the tune. So this continues to build, more and more exciting, and what becomes apparent is this is the finale. This is that fourth movement. This is the big exciting finish. Then there's this build-up after build-up after build-up. He's adding instruments, even adding the percussion section here, adding the brass instruments. It gets bigger and bigger until there's this joyous, over-the-top finish to this. Audiences always go crazy here. I'll give you a hint, the piece isn't over yet, but there's always somebody in the audience that starts to clap here. I've even done performances where you ask the audience, hey, this is not the end. You're gonna think it's the end, but it's not. Please don't clap. There's still one guy, he was in the bathroom when they made an announcement. He's like, hey, big finish, yay! He's so excited. Ruins the recording. It happens in every room. The last time I did this piece, I went as far as to tell the audience, you know what? Go ahead and clap. I think with an ending like that, Tchaikovsky meant you to clap. He did not end a movement like that and now say, now sit on your hands, everybody, while the musicians turn the page. No, he wanted you to clap there. So I say, hey, when you get to that moment, go ahead, have at it, clap. You are meant to clap there. But then it raises this question, what's next? Because we've heard our big finale, we've heard our dance movement, and we've heard our opening movement. The only thing that's left is the slow movement. So in a huge surprise, Tchaikovsky is going to end this symphony with a slow movement. And he ends not with this beautiful sort of pastoral scene, but instead with this anguished cry that we hear at the beginning. Listen to this. It's just this sort of cry to the heavens. And then he repeats it again, as if that wasn't enough. No, this call out. As he's really just, you can feel the pain in that music, the cry for help, the curse of fate there. And then later in the movement, it settles into this sense of resignation and acceptance, but profound sadness. And the thing you'll notice about almost all of the melodies in this last movement is they're descending. So even in that opening cry at the beginning, it comes down. Here, in this, the line in the violins and in the winds, it's descending. So we hear this line just continue to come down. And then there's this big buildup of energy that happens near the end where we think, oh no, maybe he's gonna somehow turn this around and surprise us at the end with this glorious finish. But then it stops, and it's as if you know there is no happy ending here. And with the basses, you hear them like the heartbeat itself from the depths of the orchestra. Powerful repeated note. And it's off the beat here, so it has this sort of almost syncopated version. It keeps taking us, and then again this descending line comes back in, all crying out as we go down the scale. We keep handing this melody down through the different sections, through the different string sections, to divided cellos and divided bass line. So we have 4 different parts in that part of the orchestra as they separate and pass this melody off until just the last few moments is the pizzicato in half of the bass section. Now, if you don't think that that is a composer saying goodbye, And I'm not sure, you may not have experienced a lot of Western music yet, because it definitely has this quality of finish and completeness. It's a really stunning moment, especially for a composer who has ended all of his other symphonies with such triumph. And then add in the fact that Tchaikovsky passed away 9 days later after the premiere of this piece. I mean, it is really striking the way fate has played a role here, not only in the creation of this symphony, but in reality, the performance of it in Tchaikovsky's life. He was not that old at this point. He was only 53. And to be cut down after this kind of artistic accomplishment, really incredible. So you can imagine why people started asking questions. Well, come on, he knew something was up. He knew he felt sick or ill or something was going on in his life. There's been some crazy rumors. Some people have even suggested he was forced to drink poison or a controversial affair would come to light. There's really very little evidence to suggest that, but some historians have suggested, yeah, maybe that's possible. There's just a kernel of maybe that has made people think that might be possible. But certainly what we are left with is an incredible artistic achievement, a beautiful, beautiful piece of music, and one of my favorite symphonies because of how it bends some of those rules, switching the order around of the movements, the 5/4 dance movement, that opening, the divided low strings that really appear so much in this symphony. The violas, the cellos, and the basses have such a prominent part in this. The bassoon, the lowest horns playing at the very low end of their range. There is just a dark cast over the entire symphony, which is really stunning. And I have found in performance that it is a devastating, devastating work. And I think not every piece needs to end happy. Sometimes it's nice to have something different. This incredible story to tell, and it's been fun to share it with you today. So if you've made it this long in this video, hopefully you didn't hate it. So that means you might be willing to actually click like there. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I was super excited last week. I passed 100 subscribers, which for me, hey, that was kind of a big deal. Considering 2 months ago I had two subscribers, and I think one was my mom. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Thank you for people who are watching these videos. Thanks for sharing all this great talk. We're excited about where we're going, and I definitely have some really interesting things planned for the coming weeks as we approach the fall finally, and some announcements from the orchestras that I work from about the various kind of virtual performances that we'll be presenting. So we're thrilled to share some music with you. So again, press like, press subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for sharing it, and take a look at one of the other videos that you see. In the meantime, enjoy Tchaikovsky here and everywhere.